Thank you very much. Welcome, and thank all of you for coming. It's a great crowd for a women's panel. So last summer, I hosted a lunch for Mike Milken and about 25 women, Mike's favorite venue. And the subject was to talk about women in finance in the United States. We were all worried, and still are, about the pitifully low numbers of women who make it to the higher ranks of C-suites, boards, management of companies in this industry. The conversation got pretty passionate, and Mike asked a question. And the question was, what would you do to make the world of finance a better place for women? So you can see some of the suggestions, I think, that we came up with. Well, maybe you can't. Anyway, we're going to put some up. So as the afternoon morphed into evening, it was a very long afternoon, it was a big subject, we realized that this was actually a much bigger issue than just us in our world of finance. We realized we really needed to talk about women and girls around the world. And I'm delighted that that discussion has grown to the point where it is now an issue being addressed here at this conference. So now the question being posed is, what would you do to make the world a better place for women and girls? As Tim Geithner said yesterday, actually right up here, on his luncheon panel, the world is a dark and stormy place. I paraphrase. But it is especially a dark and stormy place for women and girls. This is an issue that is important for everybody. It turns out that there is a direct correlation between the status of women and girls in a society and the general health of that society. The lower the status of women and girls, the higher the probability that the region is poor, undereducated, that the mortality rate, especially for mothers and their children and infants, is very high, and that the region is in conflict. Think Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, the girls in Kenya who are being used as weapons of war. So today, we have some very special guests with us who will talk to us about some of the things that they are doing and how we can all get involved. So the point of this is to stop talking and start doing something about these issues to help women and girls and make the world a better place for us all. And with that, I want to introduce the man who needs no introduction, the chairman of the Milken Institute, Michael Milken. Am I supposed to stay up here?
No, have to. If the Speaker of the House can give a kiss to the minority leader, it's the least I could do for Diana. I'm excited to be able to join you for lunch. I first want to thank Nancy Ozeas, whose tireless efforts at the Milken Institute over the past few years have made this a reality. So thank you, Nancy. I would also like to thank Diana Taylor for first hosting us for a fantastic discussion last summer and for her leadership and passion for making the world a better place for my daughter and my granddaughters, and thereby for everyone. Thank you, Diana. Around the world, girls still suffer heartbreaking discrimination, in some places unable to attend school due to family responsibilities of their labor to find firewood, fuel, and fresh water for the family. There's been progress. In 1980, fewer than 60% of girls worldwide completed elementary school. Today, it's more than 85%. Imagine for a moment the enormous wave of talent and human capital that's being unleashed to tackle the world's most stubborn problems. by applying equal opportunity to women as it is to men. As Peter Grauer and I wrote at the Wall Street Journal yesterday in our editorial, we're seeing great progress in boardrooms and executive teams, particularly in Europe and now the United States. But it's not enough to ask women to just lean in. We need to ask companies to lead in too. And that was the message of our editorial. It's a message we're sharing with the 3,700 leaders from more than 55 countries that are with us here, but it's a message that we will continue to share with millions of people around the world. It is my great pleasure this afternoon to introduce you to your moderator. And after a phenomenal year in journalism, of course highlighted by her coverage year after year of the Milken Institute Global Conference, last year Willow Bay decided that a distinguished career in journalism was not enough for her. She wanted to be part of educating the next generation of journalists. This year, she joined the faculty of the University of Southern California as the director of the prestigious Annenberg School of Journalism, where she will also serve as a professor. You might know her from Bloomberg or CNN or NBC or MSNBC or ABC or even Lifetime. But we will know her through all history of her work leading this school and educating the next generation of educators. Please join me in welcoming Willow Bay.
That was lovely. Thank you. As Mike pointed out, you certainly know me best from the Milken Conference, right, Mike? So I'm, of course, delighted to be joining you all here today. In the next hour, we are going to be hearing from activists, advocates, storytellers, leaders in business and philanthropy about the ways you all can make a difference for women and girls. As I am sure you all know, making a difference, improving the life of a woman, means that you improve outcomes for that woman's family, that woman's community, and frankly, our world. It means that you create a better world for children, women, and men, for all of us, plain and simple. But today, as Diana noted, we are moving from making the case, because that data is all too clear, to moving the needle. You're going to hear about innovative new programs, inspiring success stories, and the critical challenges that remain. And our hope is that once we get this conversation started up here on the stage, that every one of you will leave here with an agenda list of your own to go out in the world and make a difference for women and girls. Now it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce our first special guest, Ambassador Susan McCaw, President of Com Investments, former ambassador to Austria, and founding board member of the Malala Fund. Susan, welcome.
Thank you, Willow, and thank all of you for being here today to learn how you too can get involved to support women and girls. My husband Craig and I have been big believers in the power of education. We know the incredible impact that it can have on lives everywhere. In addition to providing millions of dollars for domestic student scholarships, we've donated over $25 million specifically for the purpose of educating students from the developing world. Through these efforts, we've been privileged to see firsthand the transformative power that education has had on these students who come from all parts of the globe. Many of the students that we sponsor to come to the United States for education choose to stay here, energizing our economy. But many more choose to go back to their home countries where, armed with an education, they're having an impact in their regions and communities. These are young people who dare to dream of a better world, one where greater opportunities for every individual, regardless of gender or location. One of our scholarship recipients, Shiza Shaheed, went on to co-found the Malala Fund. Shiza grew up in Islamabad and at a very young age became involved with, was an activist and became involved with some of the things we'll be talking about today. In a moment, I will introduce you to Shiza, but first let me set the stage. This past December, Shiza and I had the opportunity to travel with Malala Yousafzai and her family to Oslo, where Malala became the youngest recipient ever to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. The Nobel recognized Malala for her bravery and strength in the face of tremendous obstacles and circumstances, and for her tireless dedication in speaking out for the right of girls to receive an education. The Nobel put the subject of girls' education squarely in front of all of us. And since receiving the Nobel, Malala has continued to speak out for the 66 million girls who are still deprived of an education around the globe today. Malala, the Malala Fund, and those like-minded are making a difference, and with our support, they can make an even greater impact on making sure that girls do indeed get an education. So now it is with great pride that I have the pleasure to introduce my friend, Shiza Shahid, co-founder of the Malala Fund.
Thank you, Susan, for that very kind introduction. I would not be here today if Susan and Craig McCaw hadn't invested in me as a young woman from Pakistan. So thank you for all you've done for me and for women globally. I grew up in Pakistan as an advocate for women, and to me that meant mentoring the next generation of women, those on the front line, those risking their lives, to have their voices heard. One of those young women was Malala, who I began mentoring when she was 11 years old. She came from the north of Pakistan, a town called the Swat Valley, and she and her father risked their lives to fight against the Taliban when the Taliban began a campaign to ban female education. I had the privilege, when Malala won the Nobel Peace Prize, of traveling with her, and it was a proud moment for the global community because women and girls, and not just their struggles, but their strength, were being celebrated on the global stage. We're going to watch a clip of Malala's Nobel Peace Prize speech, but before I do that, I want to talk briefly about another activist. Last week, a young woman called Sabine Mahmood was killed in Pakistan. She was someone all of us would have been friends with. She hosted Pakistan's first ever hackathon. She was covered in Wired magazine, and she was shot 5 bullets, leaving her dead. She was killed for her activism. So as we hear Malala's voice and we celebrate her courage and her victory, it's important to keep in mind the many women who are still fighting a very difficult battle, and as we think about how we spend our time to support them and their voices and their bravery. Thank you.
I am Malala, but I'm also Shazia. I'm Kainat. I'm Kainat Somro. I am Mozoon. I am Amina. I am those 66 million girls who are deprived of education. And today, I'm not raising my voice. It is the voice of those 66 million girls.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Founder and Chief Executive Officer, Nima Capital Partners, Suna Saeed.
You probably know our next speaker, Patricia Arquette, as the Oscar-winning actress in the film Boyhood, a movie that depicts the immense struggles of a mother who is working hard to support her family. Patricia and I have actually been as close as sisters since we were teenagers. And when I saw the film, I thought this is the perfect film to showcase not only Patricia's incredible range of talent, but also who she is offstage as well as on. I knew Patricia as a young, single mother who was working hard to support her baby. She used to go on auditions in between nursing sessions, and there were times where she even had to choose between being able to afford diapers, and food. Having had the experience herself of living under the poverty line as a child, shaped her vision of the world, as well as gave her insight into living as a poor person in America. When Patricia won her Oscar, she, in her typically selfless and generous style, used her speech time to advocate for others and to make a call for pay equity. And in so doing, she pushed forward a national conversation around the issue. Pay equity is an important piece of the puzzle as our culture evolves. Creating equality for women is a sure path to address child hunger, equal access to quality education, and is an important component to creating abundance in our economic systems. Please join me in welcoming award-winning actress, pay equity advocate, and my dear friend, Patricia Arquette.
And the Oscar goes to Patricia Arquette Boyhood.
To every woman who gave birth, to every taxpayer and citizen of this nation, we have fought for everybody else's equal rights. It's our time to have wage equality once and for all, and equal rights for women in the United States of America.
Thank you all. And thank you, Suna. You're a remarkable force in business. Suna is the founder and CEO of NEMA Capital, a fund where all of her investment platforms, the public equities, the private equities, and her fund of funds are each in the top 5% of performance nationally. But besides her great business mind, she's an incredible human being, and I'm grateful to have a light like her in the world. Thank you for letting me stand on the stage with such important agents of change. Thank you to the Milken Institute for seeing the importance of discussing issues that are impacting all of us as human beings, but particularly the 50% of us who happen to have been born as female. In today's America, 40% of households have sole female breadwinners in America. Another 30% of the women are also working to contribute to the family's income. But our legal system and our businesses have not made the policy changes to acknowledge the social structural shift of the last 60 years. Today, in 2015, in our new and enlightened age, women are still paid far less than their white male counterparts. In fact, it's estimated that if women in America were paid as much as their white male counterparts, half of the 66 million women and children living in poverty in the United States of America would no longer be. In addressing the issue of wage inequality, we will be helping millions of poor and hungry children in the USA. White women make 78 cents on the dollar. African American women make 68 cents on the dollar, and Latina women make 55 cents on the dollar. Last year, Los Angeles, the 7th largest economy in the world, that number dropped. Latina women were being paid 44 cents. Our LGBT sisters are also paying this tax. If we allow it to continue, we're economically disempowering and financially smothering communities. This is long-standing systemic abuse. The truth is, it isn't just a women's issue. It can't be. We have so many female-headed households. We're at a tipping point. As it stands today, there's not one state in the union where women make as much as men. If the wage gap continues to close at its current pace, we're looking at it not closing until 2058, if ever. That's a whole nother generation of women and their children who will pay the burden and the gender penalty tax. This means for women, it will take them years longer to pay back college loans, years longer to buy houses. In fact, it costs the typical woman $400,000 over a lifetime. With women with higher advanced educations, that number balloons to $2 million. There is a pronounced pay gap at play here. A Bloomberg study from 2014 found that women make less than men in 99.6% of all occupation categories. There also seems to be a disturbing motherhood penalty and a fatherhood bonus. This study has shown that after a woman has a child, she was considered 99.7% less competent. She usually saw a 4% salary decrease per child she had, and she was 19% less likely to be promoted. Curiously, even though we know our fathers of today are very active in their children's lives, the study showed that men tended to receive a 6% raise per child, and men with children are 200% more likely to be in management positions. But there's good news about the situation. There are companies, like some of the companies in this room, you could become one of these companies, breaking rank and challenging pay inequity. So let's consider the action taken last week by one of the most respected innovators in the tech industries, Salesforce, which announced that it would conduct a complete audit of its payroll and give women raises if they make less than men for the same work. This is the fastest growing software company in history. This audit is part of a broader effort by Salesforce called Women's Surge that is making other changes to address the fact that 85% of its leadership is male. Salesforce, which is one of the strongest companies on the tech market, knows what you all know in this room, that treating women fairly helps you attract and keep top women talent. And it's good for businesses. Your female customer base, your shareholders, make decisions that impact your bottom line. Here are some ideas that are gaining traction. Avoid making your offer based on an applicant's previous pay. Since women and people of color often experience pay gaps of 20%, previous salary will ensure that their offer salary is lower than others, and not because they're less skilled or qualified for a higher salary. Be transparent about the ranges for each position when you hire. And take this really important next step. Be transparent about your non-discriminatory factors that will influence your decision about where in that range your offer will be. For your current employees, be transparent and consistent about the factors that actually guide your pay decisions. In other words, let your workers know what you pay for each job and why. Sumall, a data analytics company who utilizes wage transparency, have a 10% turnover compared with their industry's 30 to 50%. Show your companies that pay equity is important to your company. Let your employees talk about pay with other employees without fear of reprisals. Pay secrecy is a primary reason that pay discrimination festers in this country. And get legal advice about whether your factors that guide your pay decisions are actually business-related and not discriminatory. This really is critical. Get your legal advice early, not in a lawsuit. Then after you've been transparent about factors that show you've guided paid decisions, follow the lead of Salesforce and conduct a pay audit. Now I have some suggestions on these pay audits from conversations with equal pay leaders. If we're going to get this right, we have to not look at the exact same job and job title. Look at jobs of comparable nature. Calling something different when the work is of the same value is how companies expose themselves to legal risks. To learn more about that, you can contact the ERA advocates to take the Fair Pay Pledge. Make sure your audit across different locations of your work. Are you paying men in Fresno more than women in San Francisco for the same job? And how does that make sense given the higher cost of living in San Francisco? Take a look at the big picture by comparing the overall pay of men and women in your workplace. What are your numbers? How many women do you have in higher positions? If women make far less overall in your workplace, is it because men are in positions of the highest paying jobs? Ask yourself what you can do about it. Look at the structures for promotion, further training. Is your company really being fair to women across the board? Are women being given a fair shot to advance at all? And if not, what can you do to change it? So at Salesforce, for example, Mark Benioff is trying to make sure that women make up at least 30% of all attendees at any company meeting. So that's from large-scale management meetings with 500 to 1,000 attendees, to product reviews with 10 to 20 attendees. You can also flex your power as shareholders who invest in companies when you're donating to political campaigns, because women now make up 51% of the population. They are the largest voting bloc and consumer bloc. Any party or business that leaves women behind may soon find themselves out of the game. When you're supporting a political candidate, ask them, what are you doing to help close the gender wage gap? This can and should be a nonpartisan issue. Ask them, will they support legislation? Because there is legislation on the table while we speak. This may not be easy, but the reason that I came here to this particular room, accepted this particular invitation, is this is a room full of people who know how to fix problems. You can fix this for millions of American families. You can fix something that has been broken for too long. You can leave something behind that matters. You can make this your legacy, and you can do it now so that our granddaughters don't have to do it tomorrow. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome CEO of Newton Investments and founder of the 30% Club, Helena Morrissey.
Hello. Well, I'm delighted to be here, but a bit daunted. Where else but in Los Angeles would you have the chief executive of a fund management company following an Oscar-winning actress? Anyway, Peter Grauer, who Mike Milken already mentioned, who is not just the chairman of Bloomberg, important that that is, but also the founding chairman supporter of the 30% Club here in the US. We hosted a discussion this morning with chief executives who are interested and keen to do something to achieve better gender balance boards to make them more effective. Now, of course, inevitably, and Patricia touched on a number of the issues, but there is a lot still to do, many impediments still. We find ourselves in the US with more men named John, Robert, William, or James on the company boards in the US than there are women in total, with all the names. And in the UK, we have our own special version of this problem in the UK. If we look at the number of women who are chief executives or chairs of our biggest 100 companies, there are 7, but there are 19 men with the title Sir. So that's our own special British version of this. But actually, I come with some good news. We actually have seen a very fast rate of progress just below that CEO level on boards themselves in the UK in the recent past. And there are actually now no all-male FTSE boards at all. And in fact, the percentage of women on boards has just about doubled from around 12% to 24% in just 4 years since the 30% Club started. Now, I believe that the factors that have driven that really sharp acceleration in change in the UK are entirely replicable, need to be adapted, of course, to local market conditions and traditions, or perhaps we need to break the traditions, but there are things that can be done here to really accelerate the pace of change. And I've got a list of 5 factors that should go up now. Firstly, I think, and we've seen it here today, Milken Institute has had a goal of 30% women on panels, and they've achieved it. I've been here several years. This year feels a lot different. We have a measurable goal with a time frame, and that really holds people to account. Secondly, there's a political consensus around the issue that the status quo is not acceptable, that the time for talk is over. Thirdly, and probably the most important thing, the thing that's really made a difference, has been those in power driving the change. This is not women talking to other women. This is those in power who are mostly men, let's be honest, driving the change and saying it's important and saying that they want to have better gender balance at all levels in their organizations. There's a need for an openness to collaborate. This is not about one single unit or group or person doing something by themselves. This is a collective effort. And last but not least, there's no one single action either. We need to be consistent, concerted, and cohesive in our actions. And I think what we have now is a real opportunity, because there's a realization, as shown by this conference this year, that actually modern successful businesses will see a different balance of men and women. It's the future of success. Thank you.
I actually think Helena deserves a second round of applause for what she's accomplished. And a second round for Nancy Ozeas and Mike Milken for making that a reality here at the conference. Now I'd like to introduce you to a master storyteller who is using her sizable skills and her sizable network on behalf of girls around the world. Co-founder and CEO of Girls Rising, Holly Gordon. Holly?
I will read, I will study, I will learn. If you try to stop me, I will just try harder. If you stop me, there will be other girls who rise up and take my place. I am change. I am my own master now. I feel as though I have power.
Now there's nothing to stop me.
I feel I can do anything.
I can't watch that trailer without wanting to go, yes! Almost 7 years ago, our small group of journalists stumbled upon a simple truth. In countries where investments are made to educate girls equally to boys, GDP goes up, people are healthier, and governments are more stable. In short, where girls are educated equally, everything gets better for everyone, including business. To us, journalists, girls' education felt like the story of a lifetime. So we did what journalists do. We decided to tell that story in a film called Girl Rising. And we chose to tell stories that highlight the reasons that girls are not educated equally to boys. Stories of social barriers, child marriage, domestic slavery, sexual assault, and most important, outdated preferences and traditions. Because most often it's social norms, behavior that hold girls back. And the great news is that we can change social norms. And you can all play a part, an incredibly important part, in changing them too. As journalists, we believe that storytelling is the most powerful tool we have to change social norms and behavior. And today, Girl Rising has reached more than 200 million people in 158 countries. The film has been screened over 17,000 times at community-organized events, and hundreds of companies have shared Girl Rising with their employees. Intel, Charles Schwab, Bobby Brown, Google, PwC, and more. And it's working. Millions of dollars have been committed to educating girls, and millions of people now know that educating girls is key to economic growth, prosperity, and peace in the world today. But we are just beginning, because it will take all of us, everyone in this room and beyond, to achieve all the change that is possible. Through film, social media, and teaching guides, we give the power of story, the power of change to you. Our storytelling tools enable leaders like you to join us, to galvanize your employees, your marketing teams, your customers, and even your children, to be a part of changing the future for girls forever. So, if you haven't already, I urge each one of you to host a Girl Rising screening. And we are so excited about what's next, bringing Girl Rising to India in a national campaign that will reach 750 million people. India's new prime minister said that investing in the girl child is, quote, a responsibility that we have towards culture and towards humanity, and we couldn't agree more. So for those of you who are from India or who manage businesses in India, join us. Create aligned marketing campaigns, invest in programs to reach girls, host screenings, be a part of Girl Rising India. Because together, we can transform the status of girls across India so that girls are valued equally to boys, and we can ensure that every child can reach their full potential. And it is now my great pleasure to introduce my friend and partner in this effort, the tireless, the generous, the super smart activist and award-winning actress, Frida Pinto.
So in 2011, I was shooting this film called Trishna in India, in rural Rajasthan. And as part of my prep and research for the film, I wanted to meet girls who Trishna could be modeled after. So I had to meet girls from the similar socioeconomic background that she was from. And that would be the lower income group or even the negative income group, your farmers, fruit sellers, truck drivers. I met a bunch of girls, but this one really changed my life. I was told that I was going to meet this girl, this 15-year-old newly married girl. I arrived at a place. It was dimly lit by kerosene lamps, and her father-in-law and her husband invited me over and showed me this brand new temple that they had built that housed and honored a goddess, a Hindu goddess. You'll see the irony in the story. So I'm waiting for all the formalities to get done with. Frankly, I'm getting quite bored because I'm here for the 15-year-old girl. The father-in-law says, oh, you can go and meet her in, guess where? The kitchen, because she was preparing tea for all of us. So I walk into the kitchen, and there she is, this frail body and her bangles jingling around as she picks up the ingredients to make tea. Usually with a 15-year-old, the best icebreaker conversation would be to talk about school. So my first question to her was, how was school today? And she looked at me and very calmly responded that she does not go to school. Okay, so that pretty much means 99% of all my icebreaker topics were dead. Anyway, I pushed it further and I asked her, well, have you ever been to school? And her eyes lit up and she beamed when she said, yes, I have been to school. Okay, so that opened the conversation again. So I go in with my third question, which is, would you ever like to go back to school? And this is when she whipped her head around and looked at this educated person like I was the most ignorant fool on earth and said, yes, Didi. Didi means sister in Hindi. Yes, Didi, I'd really like to go back to school, but now I make tea. And that was not a grammatical error. What she meant was, from now on, I make tea. I will be a mother. I will take care of the household. And the rest you know. So let's face it, it's just the luck of the draw that we are here and not where the girl from the kitchen was. But I know that we're all goodwill people here, and none of us want this inequity. We are in a position of privilege. And by that, I don't mean that we need to feel guilty for owning that big mansion in Malibu or a fancy cars or flying first class on planes, which, by the way, if anyone wants to give away, there are places you can send it to. So donations always open. Feel free. But anyway, I think we should feel happy that we've worked really hard to be in this position of privilege, these unique gifts and talents that we have. So can we, for a minute, feel super excited by the prospect of change, by knowing that we have this choice and opportunity to be responsible? And here's the real difference between philanthropy and charity. Philanthropy creates real change and impacts holistically. Charity is like a Band-Aid. It's a temporary masking of pain, momentary relief. So here's how I want to rip off the Band-Aid and lean on to a real solution, sustainable solution. Storytelling, because it is not fleeting. It is forever, including the bad ones, which is really unfortunate. But guess what? It unlocks the power of imagination and it immortalizes inspiration. Stories challenge fear and mindsets. They educate and illuminate. They visually influence ideas. They even shock us and create discomfort. And discomfort, my friends, is good. It means there's something wrong and that something needs to be fixed. Stories cause us to grow. They generate a conversation. And without a doubt, it inspires us. Stories, and good stories in particular, we feel compelled to share and spread it around. Stories can change behavior. And so as a very proud producer of Girl Rising India, I want to let all of you know that we took the film to India and we dubbed it in Hindi, and we're going to dub it in other regional languages as well. And we've got the best of the best from Bollywood to be partners with us in this endeavor. But what happens after we tell the story? Storytelling does not just end at unlocking the power of imagination, at least not our storytelling. What happens is you empower girls. You unlock their imagination, and now they want to be educated. So for that, we're going to need infrastructure to support their burgeoning dreams. How do we fix that? How do we tackle that? We need M&Ms. M&Ms. Well, not the M&Ms that you're thinking of, but we need money and we need men. Money, I'm not just talking about charity. I'm talking about making smart investments. Well, it is very easy to distribute sanitary pads. It's harder to talk about sexual education and reproductive health. It's very easy to build 100 toilets, 1,000 toilets. It's harder to make sure that they're used, they're maintained properly, and you create a sense of pride amongst the users in this step towards hygiene and sanitation. So basically, it is easier to invest in products and services, but far more challenging to tackle the underlying problem that made you go and invest in the first place. So I challenge each one of you to invest in changing ideas, to commit to a vision and not a project, ideas that can really sustain behavioral change. And of course, men, they're my favorite part of M&Ms, because we can dream, but we cannot fulfill the dream of an egalitarian society without your support. We really need you. At Girl Rising, we want to tell brave stories of girls, but we also want to tell brave stories of men, men who support women in every walk of life, fathers, brothers, husbands, boyfriends, all of them. Women's fight against oppression is not just a women's issue. If we really want to tackle this problem, we have to address the pressures of masculinity. And by that, I mean these labels: provider, protector, dominant, leader. Through storytelling that is not polarizing or platitudinal, we want young men to be able to challenge misogyny and to negotiate their identity without being demonized. And therefore, I want to take this one moment in this room. I look around and I see there are so many men. So can I please ask the women to give the men in this room a big hand for coming here and listening to us? Thank you. You men are our hope as well, which brings me to the topic of hope. Without hope, all of what I just said was an absolute waste of time. We have to hope and believe that these ideas will come to fruition and that these girls will be empowered. We have to believe that one girl with courage is a revolution. I am so excited right now because there are 300 million youth in India who are waiting for their dreams to be invested in. Can you imagine the potential that we can unleash into this world, the responsible leaders and future businessmen and women that we're going to have? My heart's literally beating out of its chest. You know what? Okay, let's do this. It's very silly, but let me ask all of you to put your hands on your heart. Do you feel your heart beating? Well, that just means we're all connected. So the most effective way to do it is to do it. Thank you.
को वो Global Health Corps is focused on engaging young leaders, so all of our fellows are under 30. Every day we mobilize recent college graduates to work for 1 year within a health nonprofit or government agency. We want them to make an impact in that year, but we really want them being part of the solution throughout their lives.
All of our fellows have a co-fellow. If you're an American coming to East or Southern Africa, you're partnered with someone from that country. We also bring people from Eastern and Southern Africa and place them in the US.
My partner has certain things that she's really good at. When she's trying to run some data sets and I'm like, oh, so what are you doing? What's this software?
My partner, she's Ugandan, and she helps me understand how health politics in Uganda work.
We're building a group of people who can move into the future to actually address the problems in global health and make a difference.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome CEO and co-founder of Global Health Corps, Barbara Bush.
Thank you. I am so excited to be able to share this space with such a diverse and inspiring group of advocates for girls and women, and to have the chance to talk with y'all about some of the exceptional young women that I work with every day. As you might have seen in the video, we founded Global Health Corps in 2009 with the belief that health is a human right and that where someone is born shouldn't determine whether they live. We are creating the generation of leaders who will change the face of health around the world. We set out to build a movement that is strong, innovative, and solutions-driven, to invest in young people from diverse backgrounds, whether they are architects or engineers or public health professionals, and to provide them with the training and skills they need to affect change. We had seen how Teach for America had changed the conversation about education via young leaders, and we wondered if we could apply a similar model to global health. Today, we work in 5 countries in East and Southern Africa, and we work in 4 cities in the United States, Newark, Boston, DC, and New York, because we all know that health inequities also affect the US. And women and girls are at the center of why we do what we do, as women are especially vulnerable to system failures and access barriers, simply because we were born women. This looks different in rural Rwanda than it does in downtown Newark, but our fellows are fully engaged in finding solutions. From increasing access to family planning and girls' education, to ensuring that HIV-positive women have access to the drugs that they need to give birth to HIV-negative babies, women's health interventions are a critical investment globally. Without health, a woman cannot maintain sustainable employment and the status, agency, and choice that comes in hand. But, of course, women and girls are not just an at-risk or vulnerable group. We are a driving force for change and oftentimes architects of the solution. This year, 63% of our Global Health Corps fellows are young women. Our upcoming class of 150 fellows was selected from 11,000 applications, so we have a pretty strong group of young women. And they are building their leadership skills and flexing their muscles as health system strengtheners. As women, they have the ability and understanding to design a health system with women and girls at the center, and a leadership style that is extraordinary in its compassion and effectiveness. Our male fellows also benefit immensely from working alongside their female counterparts. They have no choice but to be advocates for women and use their influence and voice. Over the past 5 years, I have watched our female fellows and alums rise into leadership positions across the field. These are women that look like someone named Nargis Shirazi, who is a young Ugandan playwright and a maternal health advocate. She completed Global Health Corps in 2012. And while she was working on reproductive health issues, she was overwhelmed by how many girls had to drop out of school because they were pregnant. So she wrote a play about a man who gets pregnant and began performing it throughout Uganda to encourage different thinking about traditional gender roles. Nargis in her play caught the attention of Melinda Gates, who named her as one of the 4 most inspiring women she met in 2013. Or Maria Amelie, a 2014 Global Health Corps fellow who graduated with honors as one of Rwanda's first architects. Amelie is working to confront the fact that 1/3 of the people living in Rwanda are affected by tuberculosis, which is an airborne illness, so if anyone in here has TB, we're all exposed. She is using her architecture and design background to change the way that health centers are built throughout Rwanda, changing the way that air flows so that whoever walks in the door isn't affected by infectious diseases. Or Brian Eustace, Ian Mountjoy, and Celine Mukasini, who are 3 Global Health Corps alums who are leading efforts in recent Ebola crisis in Liberia and Sierra Leone, a disease that was detrimental to women. Up to 75% of those affected were women. Nargis, Amelie, Ian, Brian, our 600 Global Health Corps fellows and alums, motivate us every day, and they represent the powerful notion that young people can make an impact while gaining the skills that they need to be leaders throughout the rest of their lives. And we're extremely proud that 90% of them continue to work in the field of global health. We know that this is just the beginning. We can't wait to see what the world will look like in a few years when 5,000 Global Health Corps alums are placed in influential positions, whether they are the Minister of Health in Rwanda. I know President Kagame is here, and multiple of our fellows are working for him. Whether they're the Minister of Finance in the country where they're from, whether they're running the Gates Foundation, we know that this young talent will impact a field that needs solutions. And we know that the world will look profoundly different for women and girls the more that we bring creative ideas and talent to fields that need them. So I would encourage you all to do what our fellows have done, and that is to find their voice. When issues affect 50% of the population, it's not just a women's issue, it is a world issue. And for all of you that wonder how you can use your voice, and particularly men in the room, I encourage you to think about the women in your lives. I will never forget, my dad was lucky enough to have 2 daughters, no sons, and I will never forget being 7 years old at a Texas Rangers baseball game. And a good old boy from Texas came up to my dad and said, "You know, aren't you sad you don't have sons?" My dad said, "Why would I be sad I don't have sons? I get to spend time with 2 brilliant young girls." So, for all of you that don't know how to use your voice on behalf of women, you can do it on behalf of your wives, your children, your mothers, whoever. And I'd also encourage you to think about how you are mentoring young leaders who can change the world. It is now my honor to introduce Her Royal Highness, Princess Rima bint Bandar Al Saud of Saudi Arabia, the founder and CEO of Alfcar.
تحدثي فلنتحدث عن أنفسنا وعن كل من سبقنا.
أمل. خلينا نتحد ونتشارك في قضيتنا.
انصتوا إلى كل نداء يعلو.
انضمي إلينا وضمي صوتك إلى أصواتنا.
تشافي معنا في وشاح وحدتنا هذا.
انهضي كامرأة، انهض كرجل، انهضوا معنا هنا، انهضوا معنا الآن.
نحن أمهاتكم،
نحن زوجاتكم،
نحن آباءكم، نحن أزواجكم وأشقاءكم
وبناتكم وشقيقاتكم وأهلكم.
فلنقوى باتحادنا.
10,000 قويات،
10,000 وأصواتهن قد سمعت.
10,000 واعيات،
10,000 ضد السرطان.
About 8 years ago, I got a call from one of my dearest friends called Sarah to let me know that she had breast cancer. Sarah and I were born 5 days apart. We were married 10 days apart, and our children are the same age. And when she called me, I couldn't understand the difference between her life and my life, and why did she have breast cancer, and it didn't affect the rest of us. But the reality is it did. It affected every single one of us. It affected her friends. It affected her family. It affected her children. And I made a vow that day that I needed to be a part of an organization that could make sure that in my country, this doesn't happen to other families. Sarah was of the financial means where she could travel the world to take care of herself. Not every woman in my country, which all of you recognize as an oil producer, is one of the wealthiest countries in the world. You need to understand that wealth isn't just financial, knowledge is wealth, and education is wealth. So the organization that I work with, Zahra Breast Cancer Association, our mandate is to educate the women of my country on early detection and total health in order to not fall into the same pitfalls that women that are not educated fall into. What does early detection mean for us? It means not only the physical process of examining yourself, it's about the knowledge to know that the way I eat, the way I sleep, and the way I think, the way I engage affects my health. 10KSA that you just saw is a campaign that we're launching for October, and I'm here to ask for your support to believe that 10,000 women in Saudi Arabia, where I understand that you all believe we cannot do many things, but 10,000 women in Saudi Arabia, October 24th, are going to get together and stand shoulder to shoulder and form a human awareness ribbon to tell the world that yes, our health is important, and we are fully aware that our health is important. Our campaign is not exclusively breast cancer related, because when I thought about this campaign, to have 10,000 women come to one location and learn about one subject would be heartbreaking. So we've reached out to organizations that deal with emotional, mental, physical, and environmental well-being to educate these women on a total global health awareness concept. Because if a woman can understand, like I said before, that the way you think affects the way your body behaves, the way your body behaves and the way you ingest things and the way you raise your children is all one ecosystem, I think we'd all be a healthier nation. But equally, we'd be a healthier world. When you look at this video, you saw women from all walks of life, you saw men from all walks of life. Some of them were athletes, some of them were dressed traditionally, some of them weren't. Some of them were doctors, and some women covered their face. I don't believe it's my role to judge a woman based on what she wears. My role is actually to educate them and open up doors for them where they can be aware of what they want for themselves. If they choose to cover, that's their journey. If they choose to uncover, that's their journey too. But my role is to uncover for them the truth of health education and health awareness. So what I'm asking of you all today is not just to believe that we can do this. I'd love for you to go online and join us at 10ksa.com. I'd love if you have knowledge that could be disseminated that you think would be valuable for the whole world to hear. Tell us what that is, and let's work with you to see if we can translate that, if we can bring it into our community, and also share it with the global community. I also want to address the fact that many people think that we're held back, and I think the only way to be held back is to believe that you are held back. If you have the confidence to walk forward, you'll look around and realize people would like to walk with you. And what's happening in my country today is people are having the courage to stand up and keep walking, and we're finding each other. And it's not one voice, and it's not two voices, and it's not a royal title. And it's not just women, as Frida mentioned. We need the men's support in order to enact this change. And today, laws are being passed that allow our voices to be heard, but more than being heard, it allows us the courage to actually enact and enable change. This campaign is one symbol of that, but it's one symbol of multiple campaigns. It's not a solitary voice, it's a group voice. And health awareness is something, particularly in my part of the world, is extremely difficult when you're talking about women's health issues. How am I supposed to go and address a woman who is covered and explain to her why she needs to touch herself, when she is actually afraid of the fact that if she finds an illness in her body or feels unwell, that she could be replaced by the next best model because her husband's going to move on? When you think of my country, don't think of the 3 major cities where people look like me and talk like me and speak English and travel the world. The majority of my country are actually people that live in small towns that are educated locally, whose focus is on, today I need to get up and do my job because I need to earn an income to take care of my family. And those are the people that the Zahra Breast Cancer Association reaches out to. We drive down to the rural villages, we talk to them about general health, we talk to them about breast health, we talk to the men about why it's important to support the health of their women. Because as Frida mentioned, and as all of these women mentioned, the men in the boardroom, the men in the home, the men in the car, the men in the business suites are the men that are our men, and we are their women. And what we need is for everybody to understand that collectively we can make a change, and collectively we can educate each other. And again, collectively doesn't just mean in my country, it means the whole world. And I'd like for you to maybe look at that video again when you go home. Those are the faces of my country, and they each have a valid and equal voice, covered or uncovered, male or female. The only difference is, do the women have the confidence to speak? And I hope by this campaign that we will give them that confidence, because we'll give them the education and the knowledge to speak to themselves, to speak to their children, and to speak to each other. So, thank you.
Hello, everyone. As you can see, we've got an extraordinary array of people here who are deeply engaged in making the world a better place for women and girls. I'd like to begin by introducing them to you. Madame Fulleruncho Alakija, she is Group Managing Director of the Rose of Sharon Group and Executive Vice Chairman of Famfa Oil Ltd. His Excellency Paul Kagame, President, Republic of Rwanda. Cherie Blair, founder, Cherie Blair Foundation for Women. Ambassador Deborah Birx, U.S. Global AIDS Coordinator and Special Representative for Global Health Diplomacy, Department of State. Precious Malloy Motsepe, founder and executive chairperson, African Fashion International, co-founder and vice chairperson, Motsepe Foundation. And Howard Taylor, vice president and managing director, Nike Foundation. As you see, I was not exaggerating when I said this was an impressive group. President Kagame, I think we'd like to begin with you. You are a leader who did not let a good crisis go to waste, an expression we use here often in reverse. You rebuilt your nation after liberation, and one of the cores was equal participation of women in government and civil society. You have achieved remarkable results. You're the first country to have a parliament that is majority female. That alone would be a singular accomplishment. You have a justice system where women are present at all levels of law enforcement. You also have new laws to increase economic independence. Women can own and inherit property. Why did you make equal participation of all members of your society a central core to the rebuilding of Rwanda?
Well, thank you. Our history, our problems have taught us many lessons, and one of the lessons is to value everybody, and therefore, on the basis of that, allow everybody to participate. And we look at all Rwandans as equal, therefore means men and women. And men and women have both suffered, given our tragic history, but they have also participated together to make sure that we rebuild a shattered country. And it doesn't make sense. It's just, in fact, some of us, and in Rwanda, many increasingly have taken it for granted that the country is for all of us, and equally we share the benefits of what the country has to offer, and therefore we all have to be engaged in that. But it comes with a mindset. We had to change mindset in a sense that previously there was many problems for our women and girls, as you see across in many other countries. But for us, because of those lessons learned in our history and wanting to bring change to the whole society rather than just part of it, and women in Rwanda constitute 52% of our population. So how do we talk about rebuilding a country? How do we talk about improving the living standards of our people, and we leave behind 52% of our population? It just doesn't make sense. And most of these people are our mothers, sisters, our daughters. So it doesn't make sense that for me, a father of children, I have 3 sons and 1 daughter, I don't have to be thinking about how to treat one different from the other. They are all my children. And if I am looking at things like that, I imagine that's what every Rwandan wants to see, his or her family. So based on this, that's why we have encouraged, that's why we have invested in our people, both men and women. That's how girls have come to go to school and are benefiting from it.
Take a moment just to brag about your accomplishments, and what are the benefits? Just share with us a few of the benefits that you have seen from equal participation of women.
When we, for example, in the last 12 years, we have had economic growth of between 7 and 8%.
7 and 8% over the past 12 years?
Yes. And this is because everybody has participated, including women. And the investments we have made in our people, young people, girls and boys, this has contributed to that. There is no doubt about it. And when we have seen women educated, women participating at all different levels of decision making, when you have seen women numbers in the parliament contributing to the laws that have got to be made and policies that are put in place to improve the lives of the people, and women have made sure that fellow women are not left behind. But they do that successfully by working together with men, those of us who think it's the right thing to do, it's the best thing to do, to make sure that nobody is left behind, and therefore we make sure that women who have historically been left behind are pulled to the forefront.
Mrs. Alakija, we just heard the president talk about not leaving people behind, not leaving women behind. You have focused your efforts at the Rose of Sharon Foundation on widows and orphans. Tell me a little bit about your story and why you focused your efforts here.
I come from a family of 52 children. I'm number 8 of those children. It's a polygamous setting, and my parents didn't have any formal education. And my father felt that the education he didn't get, he'd like to give it to his children. Fortunately or unfortunately, I was the first of his children to go abroad to study in England with my half-sister. We were in England for about 4 years before we came back to Nigeria to continue our education. But I got nostalgic. I wanted to go back to England. And I told my dad that I wanted to study law. He said, no, you can't study law. You're a girl. You're going to get married, and that's the end of his surname. So I followed his orders. I went back to England, studied the secretarial course, came back, started working in a bank. I was there for about 12 years. And within that period, I moved from one department to the other because I was ambitious. And I left the secretarial line, and I headed the corporate affairs unit. And from there, I moved into banking. In moving to banking, I had to attend an in-house banking course. And I was in a class with graduates and MBA holders. We had to do an exam at the end of it. And out of the 11 of us that took the exam, I came 5th. So that, for me, was a pointer that, you know, if they could do it, you know, I could just as well do it. So it encouraged me anyway. I left the bank because my dream was to go into business. So I decided to go back to England to study fashion design. I can see that, I'm sure you can see what I'm wearing. All made in Nigeria, all hand-beaded. I love fashion, it's part of my passion. In doing all of that, somewhere along the line, I got into the oil business. What you will get to realize is that the African countries have a lot of opportunities. You can make a lot of friends that can help you to get to where you want to be, depending on how determined you are to get to make sure that your dream gets materializes. I was brought up to work extremely hard and to be honest and to have integrity. And all of that paid off along the line. I've always been someone who has always loved challenges and never takes no for an answer. Can't is not in my dictionary. I don't know whether it's in yours. But I didn't think that just because I'm a girl that I can't do whatever a man can do. I've never seen myself in a weak position. I see weak positions as opportunities to be able to get to the next level. So somewhere along that line, I began to get closer to God. And I told God that if he would bless me, that I would work for him all the days of my life. Because it was getting very difficult to get to where I wanted to be, and that was to get the oil license to explore and exploit an oil block. After I made that decision and that covenant, there were several times that I had to fast for 40 days, for a whole week, no food, no drink. I got the license after about 3 years. And then it took another 3 years to get technical partners. And in doing that, we realized that the allocation that we got was one nobody really wanted. Because when I went knocking on the doors of our next door neighbors, a multinational oil company, they said, oh, we were allocated that block, but we returned it because it's too expensive to explore, and it's in deep offshore, it's a deep offshore block, which is almost 5,000 feet deep, and that technology had not reached that water depth. So went away with drooped shoulders, but never want to take no for an answer. Carried on looking for technical partners. Anyway, it took 3 years to get technical partners. Others had said, why don't you just sell the license? I said, no way, we're not selling this license. I had the opportunity of having the backing of my husband at the same time, and my children, so because it was a family business. So it's good to partner with the men. It helps.
Good to partner, but tell us.
It helps.
It does help.
Yes.
Tell us, if you will, about your work with widows and orphans.
Yes, I was coming to it, sorry. Don't forget that I made that covenant with God.
You did make a covenant with God. I'm being
so
very careful not to get in the way of the covenant.
I had to get through that story to tell you how I got into the widows and orphans bit. So I got to a point that I said, God, since you had fulfilled your covenant, your part of the covenant, so it's now time for me to fulfill mine. So where is it exactly that you'd want me to serve you? Then he told me to serve widows and orphans, to look for them and to find them and to work with them and to help them and to bring them out of their misery. So that was the reason I had to tell the story. Ever since, in 2008, we have been looking after them. I got some people together and we set up the foundation. We have a board of trustees, and we've been teaching them how to fish rather than give them fish, because when you give them fish, they would eat the fish and come back for more, because that wouldn't sustain them for long. So we've been empowering the widows, and some of whom are in university even now. We have been empowering their children with scholarships, and we've been empowering orphans as well to send them to school. It has given them a lot of confidence. It has boosted their ego. It has helped them to be able to put food on their tables. They have moved from the level where their things were thrown out when their husbands die, and they're ejected from their homes, and they are treated so badly in such inhumane conditions. And it puts smiles on their faces. I do remember a situation once where one was carrying a baby when we were giving her her first check, and she virtually fainted from disbelief.
Wow.
Yes.
That's impressive.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ambassador Brooks, I was shocked when I caught up with the latest statistics on HIV and girls. 7,000 young women a week contracting HIV, nearly 80% of new infections in the hardest hit countries among girls. For every boy, there are 2 girls hit with HIV. So how has PEPFAR begun to turn girls into ground zero in the fight against AIDS?
Well, thank you, and hopefully you all saw that video at the beginning that shows the big HIV come out of the darkness to young women, and that's how it feels to the young women. In places of KZN, girls in secondary school, so in secondary school, in education, boys 18 to 19, 1.5% HIV positive, girls 13.6 by 20, boys 1.8, girls 24.7. Go to where you're seeing pregnant women, 23 to 24-year-old pregnant women in KZN in a certain community is already up to 49.7%. Yet, 7,000 new infections per week, 1,000 a day. Why we're here today, 1,000 new infections. Yet we're talking about Africa rising, we're talking about the capacity, we're talking about the demographic dividend, and we have 30% more women between 15 and 24 than we had just at the beginning of the epidemic in 1985. We have a development of a consumer class. We have the mobility. All of these things that frontier investors are looking at for why Africa rising are the very drivers of the HIV pandemic. And so those statistics are sobering. And so we launched what we call DREAMS, which stands for Determined, Resilient, Empowered, AIDS-Free, Mentored, and Safe Women, to make it clear that you need all of those pieces. And we partnered with the Nike Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to bring not only resources to the table, but business intellect and marketing intellect that will know how to reach young women where they are with messages that will resonate with them to keep them HIV negative. It is a big task. It's the one group we have not significantly impacted infection rates in, despite the great success of PEPFAR, of 7.7 million people on treatment, people living long and productive lives, the life expectancy in Africa rising back to where it was pre-HIV/AIDS. But in the shadows, there's been this ongoing and unrelenting infection in young women. And so this partnership, and this partnership that you all could be part of, is really trying to bring that kind of statistics. You all are working in many of these communities. We're happy to give you these statistics so within your communications with the government, with your communications with the businessmen in South Africa or Nigeria, to talk about the epidemic as it is today, and really continue to make people aware, because I bet most of you are shocked by the numbers. I bet you couldn't imagine a place where half of the women are infected by the time they're 24. Yet this is the reality that we're still dealing with. AIDS is not over, and it's a partnership to bring together the best of knowledge and capacity with empowerment to change the face of this current really scourge on young women. Africa will not rise with 25% of the women having HIV, a chronic disease for which there isn't a cure. Treatment, yes, but imagine your daughter at 23 having a disease that she'll have the rest of her life and could eventually kill her before she's even had her first child. So there's a lot to be done and a lot to be done together.
Howard, if you will, tell me a little bit about Girl Effect Global and why Nike Foundation believes that you can address poverty by targeting adolescent girls.
Sure. A few years ago, when I moved from a career in the British government working on foreign policy and development to the Nike Foundation, my 11-year-old son thought I'd finally got a decent job, and a job he could understand. And I had to explain to him that I wasn't actually making or selling what I now call sneakers and used to call trainers. And I explained to him that there were two different sides, or there are many sides, but two particular sides to development. And I had come from an environment working on what I considered to be the supply side of development, the vital supply of infrastructure, of schools, of health clinics, of water and sanitation, and all the things that any well-functioning economy and society needs. But what attracted me to go and work on the Girl Effect with Nike was working on the demand side. And what I mean by that is what we refer to now as the 5+1. We think of 5 things that every adolescent girl needs: health, education, a safe space, economic security, voice and rights. But we also see that even when those things are available, even when those things are provided, adolescent girls so often are unable to access them. And that's often because of what I call the demand side factors. Whether it's culture, whether it's religion, whether it's economics, whether it's community dynamics, there are all sorts of issues, all sorts of reasons that people attribute for girls not being able to access it. So what we're doing in Nike, we had an insight about 10 or 11 years ago that the hundreds of millions of adolescent girls living in extreme poverty weren't a cohort or a problem to be solved, but were actually a massive opportunity. And I think we've heard that many times on this platform in the last hour and a half or so. And we took that insight and we took the way that Nike approaches building goods around designing for an elite athlete and then selling that product to all consumers by designing for girls, with girls, and particularly the power of brand and marketing and communication that the company is so well known for. And what we're now doing is taking that model, that holistic 5+1, particularly with a focus on the +1, the demand side, and we're working in countries in Africa at the moment, we're in partnership with PEPFAR and others, to really think about how we can change that demand equation. What are the barriers to adolescent girls accessing the goods, the services that are provided for them? So we're using branded media platforms, we're using digital technology, where we're doing a lot of work now on data and trying to look for the patterns in big data around adolescent girls, to connect adolescent girls so that they see themselves differently and those around them, their fathers, their mothers, their brothers, the priest, the teacher, the imam, all see them differently. We're partnering with President Kagame in Rwanda with some of our most progressive programming there, a brand platform called Ninya Minga, which took me a while to be able to say. My Kinyarwanda is not fantastic, Mr. President. But it's a very successful partnership where we've now taken that brand rooted in local culture, very much infused and informed by the girls themselves, girl journalists writing and talking about the issues that matter to them and how they've dealt with them, and doing that in a way that's very inspirational and is attracting their brothers, their fathers, their mothers, others in. So we're beginning to shift the perception, if you like, around adolescent girls, how they see themselves and the opportunities they have, and how those around them, their gatekeepers, see those opportunities too.
Thank you, Howard. Mrs. Blair, you started your foundation in 2008 and was shaped by your experiences meeting women all over the world. So why did you decide to focus your efforts on women entrepreneurs?
Well, this conference is called The Power of Ideas, and one of those ideas is to unleash the power of women. And if we could do that, we really could transform the world. But you know, in this world, money counts. And to enable women to make the choices that men often take for granted, if they have economic empowerment, if they have their own money, then they're more likely to be able to walk away from an abusive relationship. They're more likely to insist that their children get educated. And so my thought was, let's help women, not just the girls, but the women who maybe didn't get the chance of education earlier on in their lives, the women of 20s, the women in their 30s, the women in their 40s and 50s, and allow them to get that economic independence by setting up or growing and expanding their small businesses.
And what did you find that they most needed in growing and expanding their small businesses?
They need a number of things. They need confidence, because many of these women have been told they can't do that. Your father told you you couldn't be a lawyer.
Yes.
I went to be a lawyer, and the law professor at the time said that really girls couldn't be an advocate because their voices weren't strong enough. Now, anyone who's heard the young women we've heard already realize that girls have very strong voices, but confidence when they've been told you can't do that. They need capacity, they need skills, because, as I said, many women don't have that education. So we give them business training. And they need, like every entrepreneur, access to capital. But for women entrepreneurs, it's even harder to get access to capital because of the cultural norms, the social norms that don't take women seriously, because of the laws in many countries that say if you don't own property and you don't have registered property, then we're not going to lend you any money. Then women find it even harder to get access to capital. And across all our programs, we use technology, because you can do business training, you can help give women confidence in small groups, for sure. But actually, if you can harness the power of technology, you can do, as we have done, you can deliver to 100,000 women in Nigeria, Indonesia, and Tanzania what we call our Businesswoman app, which is a series, it's a year-long course of hints and tips designed at the market women level that has enabled 80% of them to say that they've found new business, 90% of them say that they've got new ideas. And so through technology, we can take that information and reach so many more. The other thing we do with technology is our global mentoring platform, because everybody needs a friend, a mentor. Some of our women have described our mentoring platform as their invisible friend that walks with them for a year on their entrepreneurship journey. And we pair men and women across the world with women entrepreneurs in emerging markets who use the internet and give 2 hours of their time a month for a year to help women achieve a dedicated goal. So let's combine 21st century technology with the power of women, and we really will change the world.
Precious, as a doctor and a businesswoman and a philanthropist, how are you helping to women build businesses and support their entrepreneurial efforts?
Well, from my part of the world, South Africa, my husband and I started the Family Foundation in 1999, and we joined the Bill and Melinda Gates Giving Pledge in 2013. Our foundation is based on the idea of Ubuntu, which is a Zulu term that means I am because you are. I grew up in the township of Soweto, and if I can point to the one thing that has helped me to advance in life a lot, it's my education. So our family foundation focuses on education. We currently have about 358 girls who we push through university and help them to get into fields such as science, technology, engineering, medicine, and maths. We feel that is important because there is a lack of young women and girls in those fields. The other thing that we do is to support women-owned businesses, because we believe that the face of poverty on the continent is usually feminine. And to assist in reducing the levels of poverty in Africa and in South Africa, we need to get more women owning their own businesses, because we know that when women have the funding, they have the money, they invest it often into their families, as in health, education, and they grow more stable families. We also believe that we need to support young people to get into business as well. So we focus also on youth unemployment, which is as high as 60% in South Africa.
Great. Briefly, we have a very short amount of time left. What would you like to ask this audience to do to help you in your efforts? Ambassador Birks, I'll start with you.
Well, I think being educated about the factors in every part of your life where you work, so that you can be an exponential voice, because you're dealing with the sector that we really need support to have awareness. The ministries of finance, the ministries of mining, the ministries of social welfare, pieces that we don't normally get to interact with. And I think that you can have a very complementary voice to raise awareness.
Howard?
Remember that they're girls before women, and it's much easier if you can invest upstream. You can leverage much more, because it's much harder to reverse downstream. Think of making girls visible in not just the data, but the thinking, your planning, and in your businesses. And the ideas, the knowledge, the networks, the tools, digital tech, you've heard it all here already. But all of that stuff, you may feel it's very familiar to you, but in some of the areas we're working in, we're just beginning to scratch the surface of the potential for some of those things, cloud, big data, tech, etc. And so we're very much in the market for partners that we can work with to take the ideas and the progress we already see to scale much more efficiently and much more quickly than we are able to do right now.
Precious?
I was brought up by a father who believed a lot in me. He gave me so much confidence. I am surrounded by men in my life, my 3 boys and my husband, who support me and believe in me. I'd like to urge the men in the audience to join us as we try and get women and girls educated and empowered.
Mrs. Blair?
Well, I'd like to say to people in this room, some of you who were here yesterday and heard it being said that if you invest in a woman, then 90 cents of your dollar will be reinvested. And if you invest in a man, it's 30 to 40%. And I detected across the tables around me some skepticism by some of these hard-bitten investment bankers that could possibly be true. Now, what I say to you is, of course, you're all 90% men. You have never held a woman back. You promote your wives. You absolutely invest in your daughters. You respect your mothers. But can you really tell me that you don't know of the man who actually abandons, as my father abandoned, his wife and his 2 children and went off to pursue his own dreams, leaving them with nothing? Or that you don't know of the man who drinks all the family's money away and then comes home and beats them up when they protest? Or where the man who is just been brought up from the very beginning to think because he's a man, because he's a boy, he is entitled to more. And then imagine why that figure for men is 30 to 40%. It's because men like you are not standing up and insisting to men like them that that is no longer, in the 21st century, an acceptable way to be a man.
President Kagame, if you will, I would like to invite you to make some closing remarks and conclude the panel.
I would be happy to say that gender parity, to achieve it, is a joint project between men and women, where women leverage their power, their potential, which they should work towards and which men should allow to happen as well. And it requires bold steps, not incremental ones. So I think the bold decisions can be jointly made and allow the potential of women to be realized. We invest rightly as part of our society, as we want to develop the whole society to move forward. And I think it is achievable. We've seen progress in my own country, and if my country can make progress on this, I think any other country or society can make it too.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all very much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you, Willow, and thank you, all of you wonderful ladies and gentlemen, for making this such a successful program. Thank you very much.